You get a shot! You get a shot! You get a shot! Oh my goodness! Everybody gets a shot! And now you get to wait in line as Oregon prepares to open vaccines for everyone and bump up essential workers. And it seems like Portland is throwing everything it can at the homelessness crisis, but it still gets worse. So how exactly do they plan to spend that huge tax measure we just passed? And an Oregon Duck is showing the world what's really going on behind the scenes of March Madness.
This is our weight room. Let me show y'all the men's weight room.
Have you noticed the difference? Seems like a problem. Here's the story. It's Friday, and it's a big news kind of day, okay? It's a big news Friday, which I'm excited about. I'm Dan Haggerty, this is The Story, and all the ways to communicate with us at the bottom of your screen. Use that hashtag, HeyDan. Reach out to us on email at thestory@kgw.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm everywhere, okay? Whether you like it or not. So, by now, you have probably heard today's big news. If you didn't, don't worry because this is the news. The vaccine timeline in Oregon is moving up. So what does that mean? Well, everyone will be able to sign up for a shot starting May 1st. But if you're a frontline worker, one of those essential workers, you can actually sign up starting April 19th, which is just a month from today. Exactly a month from today. Now, before you start tweeting at me and saying, hey, Dan, who is an essential worker, right? Does that include me? Rest your Twitter fingers, because we've got a list. It includes grocery store workers, retail workers, college and university workers, trade school workers, U.S. postal workers, vaccine manufacturers, PPE manufacturers, ranching manufacturers, greenhouse manufacturers, beverage manufacturers. If you manufacture paper or petroleum or coal or asphalt, roofing, chemicals, plastics, metal, industrial machinery, computers, electronics. I kind of feel like computers are electronics, but what do I know? Transportation manufacturers, medical equipment, repair and maintenance, people who work in public transit, air transportation, rail transportation, water transportation, truck drivers, taxi drivers, limo drivers, let's go, charter bus drivers, transportation warehouse workers. If you work for a delivery service, in a restaurant, for a utility company, if you help extract oil and gas, if you work in a mine, shout out to my miners, gas station workers, respect to my friends at the pump, people in the fuel delivery industry, environmental consulting. Wastewater, waste management, recycling, construction workers and contractors, real estate peeps, hotel and motel, housing services, information technology workers, communications, news media. I told you I was essential. Stop emailing me otherwise. Public safety workers, civil engineers, human services, social services, bank teller, accountants, tax prep people, payroll people, court staff, judges, attorneys, government workers, and elected officials. Which makes you think. It makes you wonder, did I just name every possible profession? Are there other jobs than that? If you work one, let me know. Email me right now. Double check. I'll read them again. Grocery store workers, retail. I'm just kidding. If you do want to see a full list, it's on kgw.com right now. And believe it or not, that wasn't even the entire list. There's even more jobs the CDC considers frontline, so be sure to check. If you didn't hear your industry, I want to know, is there more industry than that? Were astronauts on the list? Are they still waiting? We've also got info up there for people who can get vaccinated even sooner. So if you have an underlying health condition, if you are pregnant, are homeless, or a wildfire victim, if you're a seasonal farm worker or a food processing worker, you'll actually be able to get started at the end of this month. But with all that said, I think it's the perfect time to check in with our vaccine guy, Pat Dorris, all right? Because Pat, I just listed off this huge list of people who are going to become eligible very, very soon, and then everybody's going to be eligible. So, one, how many people are we actually talking about here? And two...
It'll be about...
Go ahead. Let's start with one.
I'm so excited to talk with you about this.
Let's do it. How many people is
2 million over the next 2 months.
2 million over the next 2 months. We've seen these websites crash, left and right when a much smaller number of people than that were trying to get, vaccine appointments. So what is the anticipation when we got 2 million people trying to sign up?
Well, first off, it's going to be staggered, so it's not everybody all at once, and that will help. And they're expecting more vaccine to come in every week. They're hoping in early April that it'll start coming in at about 250,000 doses a week, so 250,000 doses. And if they can figure out a way to get that out as quickly as it comes in, it could be relatively smooth. But even Patrick Allen said, yeah, there's going to be some traffic jams for a few weeks every time we open a new one of these categories. So it could be rough.
So how are they staggering it exactly? Are we talking about like how certain people in certain professions are starting in April and then the rest of the people in May? Is that the staggering process?
No, it's just the dates. So, the migrant farm workers are going to be able to start on Monday, and then on April 19th, a bunch of the frontline workers probably that you've mentioned are going to go, and then on May 1st. So even just by that, you'll be kind of holding back some groups and giving some others a little bit of an advantage to get through.
Still, with everything I've seen, I'm trying to paint a timeline in my mind when all of these people will be completed with both shots, or one shot in some cases with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So what's the timeline that the state has for when we are out of the woods here?
Well, the state's not really providing one. I mean, in the past, they've thrown around general numbers like, by this summer or maybe by late summer. Just kind of by doing the math, they're hoping to get to 80%. And they're saying that sometime next week, they're going to give the 1 millionth person in Oregon their first shot. So that does sound impressive, but it's only 33% of adults in Oregon. So if you're trying to get to 70 or 80%, you still have about another 1.5 million people to go. So if you're getting 250,000 doses a week, that's going to be about 6 weeks. And, in the last group, that will only be the first dose, and then you've got another month for them to wait to follow up. So it could easily be, late May, mid-June before the last people are getting their doses, if everything works exactly right. And as you know, that rarely happens.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I'm feeling hopeful, Pat. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
And with that, why don't we do our daily vaccine count? We'll check in right now. As of this afternoon, more than 935,000 Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose. Like Pat said, we're almost at 1 million here in Oregon, and that works out to be almost 22% of the state's population with that first shot. In Washington, more than 1.6 million people have gotten at least their first dose. That works out to 21.4% of the state's population. Let's talk about solutions, shall we? And how many you can buy with $250 million a year. You see, that money from that massive metro homelessness tax that passed in 2020 is about to start rolling in. Now, this is supposed to be a game changer. It may be the most aggressive tax in the country to attack homelessness head on. But let's be honest. All right, this community has been promised solutions before many times, and homelessness barely seems to notice. So I Zoomed with the regional housing director for Metro about exactly how this money is going to be spent.
And what that means, it is a range of interventions that we know to work that help get people out of homelessness and into housing. Everything from actually paying rent assistance, getting folks into their housing. It could be health services. It could be employment services. It could be shelter beds. It could be any range of interventions that we know help end people's homelessness.
This is all stuff we're already doing now, right? So is this just more money to do things we're already doing?
We know that a lot of what we're doing works. The data tells us that. What we also know is that it's nowhere near the scale. So this is an opportunity to scale interventions and strategies that we know end homelessness. And so that's one part of this, is that this is going to scale our community's infrastructure for services, and it will also begin to look at building new infrastructure that doesn't exist today.
Do you think this is enough money? I mean, because I think, you talked about the data that you saw, that you were referencing earlier. It shows that individuals are being helped in massive numbers, but we're still seeing homelessness as a whole grow. So is this going to be enough to at least stop the growth?
So I do think it's important to differentiate what this measure does and what the voters paid for, right? And so what this tax measure will pay for are the interventions that will end people's homelessness and also prevent people from going into homelessness to begin with, right? So there are eviction prevention measures or strategies incorporated into the strategy, but again, a lot of that is happening in our community and we'll get to expand that. So what the measure contemplated was that we would be able to place about 5,000 folks experiencing homelessness into permanent housing, and that we'd be able to serve an additional 10,000 households with a range of services from prevention to other wraparound services to help folks stay housed.
Okay, so you notice she didn't really answer that last question with a yes or a no when I asked if this landmark amount of tax money would actually be enough. But she did give us some figures there, right? 5,000 people into permanent housing and 10,000 people that are going to help stay in the homes they're in now. But I want to give you some data that gives some context to whether or not that will help. See, the last time Multnomah County did a count, they estimated that there were 4,015 people experiencing homelessness, and 2,037 of those people were the people who you see out sleeping in tents or sleeping outside on the streets. Now, we don't know what that number is right now in our area, but economists at Columbia University predicted a 40 to 45% rise in homelessness nationwide through 2020. Again, what does that mean for the metro, for Portland? I can't tell you. We don't have that data right now. And while you might think to yourself, based on those numbers, it kind of seems like what we just passed, the money that will be coming in with this new tax, could help get most of those people who are homeless right now off the streets and into houses. But you have to remember that the real fight is keeping people from being homeless in the first place. We're going to keep digging into this topic. Please let me know what's on your mind, what you're curious about. We're going to talk a lot more about it next week. Use that hashtag, HeyDan. Now, here's something else that needs solutions: the trash problem in Portland. We've been talking about it a lot here on the story. I know you've been talking a lot about it, too, because you've been sending comments into us and some questions as well, like this one from Lori. She says, "Hey, Dan, I'm wondering if you know why our highways have so much trash alongside them. I thought we used inmates to clean the sides of roads. Who is responsible for keeping them clean?" And it turns out the journalists over at the Oregonian just answered this question in a piece. It's a story we think is worth your time. So Metro is responsible for keeping those areas clean, and they're no longer using inmates to clean up trash along the highways. At first, it was because they couldn't get those inmates to that work because of the coronavirus. But Metro also made a long-term decision to stop using prison labor. It's a social justice issue. You see, the inmates were paid less than minimum wage. They're predominantly people of color. So the article is interesting. They all looked into what Metro is doing now instead to try and clean up the trash. Spoiler alert, it's not going great, okay? As you probably see when you're driving. They're struggling right now, but they have a plan, and you can read all about it in the Oregonian. Congresswoman Jamie Herrara Beutler has been kind of a wild card Republican. So how about another twist? She just voted against the Violence Against Women Act, even though she supported it in the past. And a lot of it has to do with something called the boyfriend loophole. We'll explain when the story continues. Welcome back. Always get a lot of emails and comments when we talk about homelessness on this show. I was just going through a few of them during the break, as well as a lot of people I knew we would get a lot of specific questions about who are the frontline workers, who are the essential workers. One thing, a lot of people mentioned hairdressers, right? Why aren't they on the list? I know. Look, we're going to clarify a lot of this for you as we learn more and answer some of your questions. So keep them coming using the hashtag HeyDan. Now, I don't get to say this next sentence on the show a whole lot, but brace yourself. Let's turn now to sports. How'd I do? I sound like an anchor, a news guy? Seriously, though, it's March Madness. It started this week, we're told. The men tipped off yesterday. The women do the same on Sunday. But already, the women, specifically the University of Oregon women, are making news by calling out the NCAA for some pretty, well, let's just say it, some pretty sexist treatment. Have you seen this yet? The support that they're getting, these players, is staggering. But wait until you see the story. Here's Maggie Vespa.
I got something to show y'all.
University of Oregon forward Sedona Prince calling out the NCAA on the workout facilities provided to women's players in their San Antonio bubble at the 2021 March Madness tournament.
This is our weight room. Let me show y'all the men's weight room.
After giving a nice pan of the men's facilities, that's a separate bubble in Indianapolis, Prince keeps going.
Now, when pictures of our weight room got released versus the men's, the NCAA came out with a statement saying that it wasn't money, it was space that was a problem. Let me show y'all something else. Here's our practice court, right? And then here's that weight room. And then here's all this extra space.
That video, which ends with,
"If you aren't upset about this problem, then you're a part of it,"
was posted Thursday evening. By 2 p.m. Friday, it had 10.4 million views and counting. The attention at a fever pitch. Ducks alum and WNBA star Sabrina Ionescu tweeted photos of the two setups, writing, "Thought this was a joke." Then more big names. NBA star Steph Curry, actress and Me Too advocate Alyssa Milano, and Oregon Senator Ron Wyden. Wyden, who attended UC Santa Barbara on a basketball scholarship, writing, "The inequality is shameful. Do better, NCAA." For its part, the NCAA has apologized for the, quote, blemish. They say staff originally thought there wasn't enough space in the women's facility for a weight room. In a news conference Friday, they vowed to rectify the issue.
That I apologize to the women's basketball student athletes.
This as athletic equipment manufacturers and retailers announced they're shipping workout equipment to the women's bubble immediately.
You shake your head and think, oh, it just doesn't have to be this hard.
For some perspective, we turned to Ann Schatz, Portland's first female sports broadcaster. In her career, she's called games for the Pac-12, ESPN, you name it. We spoke as new headlines were coming out, pointing to more discrepancies in this year's March Madness tournament. The Washington Post reporting photos show swag bags doled out to men's teams are larger than those given to the women, and that while all players are undergoing frequent COVID tests, those given to the men produce results faster. The NCAA again vowing to address discrepancies. This as a headline in the Wall Street Journal reads, "Women's March Madness is growing in popularity and undervalued."
I don't want to hear about lack of space. I don't want to hear about budget. What I know is that this NCAA women's tournament that generates money, that generates great ratings, that has the attention around this country and globally, these women deserve only what the men are getting.
The first women's game tips off Sunday. Maggie Vespa, KGW News.
I can't get over that story. It's like one weight rack with some dumbbells. I was telling people at work here when I was a waiter back in the day, I first started, and I was horrible at it, and somebody gave me a tip of just 1 penny. It was like worse than getting nothing at all. How insulting. I'm sorry, I can't get over that. I can't get over that story. All right, moving on. Let's talk about some laws. Let's talk about some legislature stuff. The Violence Against Women Act is headed to the Senate for renewal. It's a law that's been around since 1994. It was actually introduced by Joe Biden back when he was a senator. It does a lot of things, like providing money to prosecute domestic violence and other violent crimes against women. It also punishes people convicted of those crimes. It actually expired 2 years ago, and it was part of President Biden's campaign. He promised to renew it, to bring it back. Well, that's what they're trying to do right now. And every Democrat and 29 Republicans in the House voted to pass this new version of the act, while more than 170 Republicans voted no, including 2 from our area, Washington's Jamie Herrara Beutler and Oregon's Representative Cliff Bentz. We reached out to both of them to see why they voted the way they did. We haven't heard back from Representative Bentz yet. We'll let you know when he returns our messages. But Jamie Herrara Beutler said this: "I've been a consistent supporter of the Violence Against Women Act and had already co-sponsored a clean extension of this important legislation to provide funding certainty for its programs. Unfortunately, the version of VAWA Democratic leaders put forth this week contains overly partisan provisions that will doom it in the Senate. Assisting survivors of assault and protecting against domestic violence are too important for political gamemanship. We should cut through the politics and process and pass a version with strong bipartisan support now." Now, she didn't exactly say what her problem was really with this version of the bill, so we asked for some clarification, and her communications director told us one of the issues was the, quote, lack of due process for suspending Second Amendment rights. So what does that mean exactly? Well, we can assume, I think, that it's a reference to the bill's attempt to close what they call the boyfriend loophole. So what is that exactly? Well, let me explain. If you are married and you get convicted of violence against your spouse, you can't buy a gun. You're barred. But if you're unmarried, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, partners, the same rules do not apply. Now, Republicans have said the provisions to the boyfriend loophole in the past have just been too broad, meaning, how exactly to determine someone is a boyfriend. 1 date, 1 year, living together. There's no specific way to define that. And truthfully, who's to say? This is the reason Republicans voted it down 2 years ago when they controlled the Senate. Now, the new version, right, is moving through so far. And this law also includes protections for people in the LGBTQ community and undocumented immigrants. The Violence Against Women Act heads to the Senate now, and Democrats have the majority there, but only slightly. They only have 50 seats, so they might need some help from Senate Republicans to get on their side here if they want to stop a filibuster. All right, keep sending in your questions and your comments and all that stuff, your concerns, your complaints. I take those too. Use that hashtag, #HeyDan. I'm going to read a few at the end of the show. But first, did you know the Oregon Ducks weren't always the Ducks? And they got pretty lucky during their very first March Madness. We're going to finish the story with that one next. Welcome back. I know we already talked about March Madness, but that's kind of what everyone's talking about, I think, right now. So let's keep it going. All 4 Oregon and Oregon State teams are in the tournament right now. So tonight, we got kind of a vault inside of another vault. It's like a vault inception situation. This is a story that we did back in 2007 about the 1939 University of Oregon Webfoots men's basketball team, who were the very first NCAA tournament winners.
It was nearly 70 years ago, and the Oregon Ducks made history, winning the first ever NCAA basketball championship. Now the tournament has the juices flowing once again for 88-year-old John Dick.
It stirs up old memories, and it means a great deal to me because I'm very fond of this group of young men. I think that they are all excellent role models, and we can all be proud of them.
Dick, a retired admiral, is the last living member of the Tall Furs, who beat Ohio State 46-33. Dick was the leading scorer with 13 points. Oregon finished 29-5 and received a hero's welcome on their train ride back through Oregon.
If you had to pick one thing that you took from that whole experience for the rest of your life, what was it?
I'd have to say that we won the whole thing. In the state of Oregon until that time, there had not been a sports team who had won a national championship.
In 1988, on the 50th anniversary of the Final Four, I interviewed head coach Hobby Hobson, who passed away in 1991.
I'm very proud of some things about that team, by the way, Joe. The starting 5 were all native Oregonians.
The players are bigger, stronger, faster, and more skilled now, but Dick says the ingredients of a winner are still the same.
We didn't care who got the credit for it. We were interested in one thing: winning.
I'd like to see a couple of wins from some of our teams in the tournament. That'd be fun, right? We don't have much time, so I just want to address a couple of comments. We had some people writing in and saying, what about unemployed essential workers? Are they eligible on April 19th? I still can't quite get over the whole hairdresser, barber, beautician type thing, right? They're working with people. Haircuts I feel pretty essential to me. We remember what people looked like when they were closed all those months, remember? Look, there are a lot of questions that we still need to answer, and I know you have a bunch for us. So send them to us over the weekend. We'll look through them and start working on those for you next week. In the meantime, that's the story. Have a good weekend. I'll see you back here Monday.